Welcome to Copilot Podcasts. A 13-year-old boy sits in his room in Japan, scribbling equations that will change everything. When he finishes, he's mathematically proven that God exists. But instead of celebrating, he attempts suicide. Today, we're diving into Marvel's Gorgon, specifically Tomi Shishido, the terrifying genius who turned mathematical proof into nihilistic rage, and how his story reveals the darkest corners of superhuman intelligence. By the end of this episode, you'll understand how Marvel created one of their most philosophically complex villains and why his ultimate fate is both ironic and inevitable. So, let's start with the basics. Who exactly is this character that most people have never heard of?
Tomi Shishido is honestly one of Marvel's most disturbing creations, and that's saying something. According to the Marvel database, he's a Japanese mutant whose development was so accelerated it's almost incomprehensible. We're talking about a baby who spoke his first words at 2 weeks old.
Wait, 2 weeks? That's not even possible for normal human development.
Exactly, and it gets more intense. By 3 months, he was walking. By his first birthday, he could read and write. And here's where it gets really wild. By age 4, he was ranked as one of the 5 greatest painters in Japan.
One of the top 5 painters in an entire country at age 4. That's not just genius level, that's like alien level intelligence.
But his mind couldn't handle it. According to the page content, by his 6th birthday, he had composed his first opera and attempted suicide for the second time. The second time, meaning he'd already tried to kill himself before age 6.
That's absolutely heartbreaking. So we're looking at a child whose intelligence developed so rapidly that it became a curse rather than a gift.
And then came the moment that defined everything. At 13, Tomi created what the Marvel page describes as a mathematical formula that proved, without a doubt, the existence of God. But instead of finding peace or purpose, this discovery broke him completely.
How does proving God exists break someone?
Because according to the Marvel database, Tomi concluded that if God existed, then humans could be nothing more than slaves. This led him to develop what they describe as a great hatred to the sole concept of there even being a God. He basically decided to devote his existence to spiting the divine.
So his mathematical proof wasn't a spiritual awakening, it was the birth of a nihilistic philosophy that would drive him to become a terrorist.
Exactly. And around the same time, he discovered his mutant ability. When he made eye contact with people, he could turn them to stone. The Japanese media dubbed him the Gorgon, after the Greek mythology creature.
The timing is so dark. He proves God exists, decides to hate God, and then discovers he has the power to literally petrify people with a look. It's like the universe was setting him up to become a villain.
And he leaned into it completely. According to the sources, he learned to fight and operate while blindfolded, partly thanks to low-level telepathic abilities. He had to cover his eyes to avoid accidentally turning people to stone.
Wait, so he's not just incredibly intelligent and able to petrify people, he's also telepathic? That's a terrifying combination of powers.
Right, and the write-ups.org analysis mentions that he uses his telepathy in combat to know his opponent's moves as soon as they think of them. He can handle foes like Wolverine or Elektra with overwhelming ease.
So by age 13, we have a mathematical genius who's proven God exists, hates the concept of divinity, can turn people to stone, fights blindfolded, and reads minds. What does someone like that do next?
He forms a death cult. The page content describes how, as a teenager, Gorgon formed a mutant death cult called the Dawn of the White Light and subjected Japan to relentless terrorist attacks for 4 years.
4 years of terrorism. And according to the UncannyXmen.net source, this cult grew to support hundreds of mutant followers under his command. So he wasn't just a lone wolf, he was building an army.
But even that wasn't enough for him. By 18, he wanted to join something bigger, the Hand, the ancient ninja organization. And to prove himself worthy, he did something unthinkable.
Let me guess. It involves his stone-turning powers and people he cared about.
He killed his entire family. According to the Marvel page, Gorgon killed all of his friends and family to prove to the Hand that he was worthy of membership. He petrified them and kept them in his apartment in Kobe.
He kept his petrified family as, what, trophies? That's beyond disturbing. That's like serial killer level psychological damage.
And it gets worse. When he reached the Hand's sanctuary and fought past their guards while blindfolded, the Hand questioned his dedication. So he killed himself, telling them to resurrect him to prove his commitment.
He killed himself as a job interview. I mean, that's commitment to the bit, but it's also completely unhinged.
But here's where it gets interesting from a larger Marvel perspective. After being resurrected and joining the Hand, he didn't stay loyal. He helped Baron Stryker unite the Hand, Hydra, and AM into this massive villainous alliance.
So he's playing the long game. Join the Hand, gain their trust, then use that position to build something even bigger. That's actually brilliant strategy.
And their plan was audacious. According to the Marvel page, they created a plan to kill several of America's major superheroes and resurrect them under Hydra control. Gorgon personally killed Wolverine and supervised other killings.
Wait, he killed Wolverine? The guy with the healing factor and adamantium claws? How do you even do that?
The page content doesn't give specifics, but remember, Gorgon can read minds and predict moves, plus he has that petrification power. And according to writeups.org, he can take astounding amounts of damage and recover quickly, probably due to some healing ability.
So he's not just mentally overpowered, he's physically nearly indestructible too. No wonder he could take down Wolverine.
He also killed Elektra, drawing her into a trap. The Hand resurrected her as a weapon under their control. But when Wolverine was captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. and returned to his normal state of mind, Gorgon saw an opportunity.
Let me guess, he took over Hydra himself.
Exactly. He became the Supreme Hydra. And his plans were typically grandiose. He wanted to destroy the world using machines that Wolverine had stolen from Reed Richards. We're talking about technology from one of Marvel's greatest scientific minds.
So this is a guy who went from child prodigy to cult leader to ninja assassin to the head of a global terrorist organization, all by his early 20s. That's a terrifying resume.
But his downfall came when Elektra and Wolverine destroyed the Hand and large sections of Hydra. They came for him directly, and this is where we see both his power and his ultimate weakness.
How did the final confrontation play out?
According to the Marvel page, Gorgon defeated Elektra easily and impaled Wolverine. He was so confident that he went after Nick Fury, the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., who was crippled at the time.
So he's basically won at this point. He's taken down two of Marvel's most dangerous fighters and is about to kill the head of the world's premier intelligence agency.
But Wolverine stopped him again, and Gorgon defeated him a second time. This time, though, Gorgon decided to use his petrification power to finish Logan off. He took off his glasses to turn Wolverine to stone.
Oh no. I think I see where this is going.
Wolverine unsheathed his claws. The reflection of Gorgon's eyes in the adamantium caused him to turn himself to stone. Then Wolverine killed him. After all that intelligence, all that planning, all that power, he died because he couldn't see his own reflection.
That's actually poetic justice. The guy who spent his life trying to prove human superiority over God, who turned his family to stone, dies because he literally can't face himself.
But here's what's interesting. That wasn't the end of his story. According to Wikipedia, he was resurrected later in Secret Warriors number 2, and during the Krakoan Age, he was given a second chance on the mutant nation of Krakoa.
A redemption arc? For someone who killed his own family and led terrorist organizations?
Krakoa was all about giving mutants second chances, even villains. He joined the Legionaries, which was Krakoa's peacekeeping force. But the page content mentions something really interesting. In 2022, Marvel ran a voting contest for fans to pick a new X-Men member.
And Gorgon was one of the options?
He was one of 10 characters, including Gentle, Armor, and others. But according to the Wikipedia page, a digital comic revealed that the election was also held in-universe, and Gorgon lost the vote.
So even in a world where he's supposedly reformed, people still don't trust him enough to make him an X-Man. That says something about the weight of his past actions.
It really does. And you know what's fascinating? The fact that there are multiple Gorgons in Marvel. One's an inhuman with hooves who creates earthquakes, and the other is this terrifying mutant who turns people to stone. It's like Marvel just really loves the name Gorgon.
That's actually confusing for casual fans. You could be talking about the guy who stomps and creates seismic tremors, or the guy who mathematically proved God exists and then decided to hate divinity.
Mark Millar and John Romita Jr. created this character in 2004, and you can tell they were going for maximum shock value, a child prodigy who becomes a terrorist cult leader by age 13.
But what makes Tomi Shishido work as a character isn't just the shock value, it's the internal logic of his descent. Every step makes sense given his psychology.
Exactly. The mathematical proof of God wasn't meant to be inspiring, it was the moment that broke him. Because he concluded that if God exists, humans are nothing but slaves, which drove his entire nihilistic worldview.
And then discovering he could turn people to stone just reinforced that worldview. He literally had the power of a god, the power to end lives with a glance.
Which makes his death even more meaningful. He spent years accumulating power, proving his superiority, building organizations. But in the end, he was undone by the most basic human limitation. He couldn't see himself clearly.
The irony of Gorgon's death is perfect. He spent his whole life trying to kill gods and prove human superiority, but died because he literally couldn't see his own reflection, the most human thing possible.
And that's what makes him such a compelling villain. He's not just evil for the sake of being evil. He's a genius who looked at the universe, didn't like what he found, and decided to tear it all down.
It's almost tragic. If he'd had different support systems, if someone had helped him process that mathematical proof differently, maybe he could have been a hero instead of a terrorist.
But that's the thing about Marvel's best villains. They're often heroes who took a wrong turn somewhere. Gorgon just took that wrong turn at age 13 and never looked back.
Until Krakoa gave him that second chance. Though apparently, even reformed, he's still not X-Men material in the eyes of his fellow mutants.
Which raises interesting questions about redemption and forgiveness. Can someone who killed their own family ever truly be redeemed? Krakoa said yes, but the X-Men vote suggests the answer is more complicated.
So when you step back from all this, what we have is a character who represents the dark side of genius. What happens when incredible intelligence meets existential despair and unlimited power?
Exactly. Tomi Shishido is a cautionary tale about isolation, about what happens when someone too smart for their own good doesn't have the emotional support to handle what they discover about the universe.
And his story shows us that even in a world of superheroes and cosmic threats, the most dangerous villains are often the ones who started as children who just needed help.
His mathematical proof of God's existence could have been humanity's greatest discovery. Instead, it became the foundation for decades of terrorism and murder. That's the real tragedy of Gorgon.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode of Co-Pilot Podcasts. Remember that 13-year-old boy who proved God exists? His story reminds us that intelligence without wisdom, power without compassion, and genius without guidance can create monsters. Sometimes the most terrifying villains are the ones who started as gifted children who just needed someone to help them see clearly. Thanks for listening.